You are actually missing the hyperbolic time chamber of social skills advancement if you're not taking full advantage of your college environment. So, yes, this is actually going to be about college. If you are still in it right now, I want you to use all of the resources there to its full disposal. There's two parts to this, right? So the first thing is the hidden education. One of the hidden educations of college that people really don't think about but partake in is that it's essentially coming from high school. It's your first real taste of the world outside of academia, even while it's still in academia. Universities are technically considered public property, which is why there's so much protests and so much random people coming onto campus all the time. And you're away usually from your family for the first time, you're figuring things out, and you're all just kind of in this mini city together. There's so many different sub-factions and groups that you can join, and there's really not an environment like this outside of college unless you live in a big city and you're pretty well connected. That being said, one of the strongest things of this training environment is that if you mess up in one group, that is okay. You can just go to another group and burn it down again. When I say burn it down, what I mean is you can take risks, and if they don't pay off, and let's say you really make a big fumble or you embarrass yourself in front of somebody, or you end up getting a bad reputation, or you really end up not getting along with some of the leaders of the group. A million things can happen where maybe you just don't like the group or the group doesn't like you. And that's okay in college because there's so many other groups you can join. Nowhere else is there going to be this many chances, this much volume of groups that are already pre-made and ready for you to join, where it doesn't necessarily impact your effect on other groups. So in the real world, for example, let's say you mess up with one group, that group's gonna like dissipate and it's not going to exist in your life anymore. But if it's like a larger community where there's like a lot of people, it can impact your reputation, and that can have adverse consequences for you that you might not have been aware of. And so it's very risky in the real world to take these social risks and try some of these like new behaviors without the threat of making mistakes and not being able to come back from them. I always do think, though, that healthy communities are ones where people can make mistakes, and as long as there's, like a justice and restitution, then, people should be like given like a second chance, because everybody makes mistakes. In college, people are not as forgiving about that. Everyone's really a stickler for not making any sort of, I guess, negative impact in any organizations or social circles. And that's quite fair. In college, most people want to be cool. They want to fit in. They want to, be top dog. And that lends itself to a lot of behaviors that will kind of exclude people that don't fit the vibe of the group. And by the way, when you join a bunch of groups, you're not going to fit into all of them. And that's okay. That's a good thing. We were all not meant to get along with each other. I'd be very suspicious of anyone that did get along with everyone. So the reason this is a hyperbolic time chamber is because you have a genuine entry, middle, and end to each group. And how you conduct yourself, how you forge your identity with these groups is going to either consolidate and make foundational some of these new behaviors that you're learning, or it's going to show you that this is not the way or not the right context. In this way, people get a very rare chance to have a bunch of tries at something in a relatively short period of time, anywhere from 3 to 5 years on average. So let's say you go into a student organization and it's all about, volunteering, or it's all about being in Greek life, or it's all about, career advancement. You're going to go in there and there's going to be, it's very similar to real life, there's going to be leaders, there's going to be pillars of the community, there are going to be drifters, there are going to be staff or organizational helpers. And this is very, very similar to how the real world works. Let's take the Dodgers, for example. There's going to be, the people at the very top, the owners and the people who make the big boy money decisions. There's going to be the marketing team and staff for them. There's going to be their liaisons and their staff for all the events, and the actual Dodgers themselves. And there's going to be the fans. And so that's a very large, almost nebulous idea of like a social circle. But organizationally, a lot of places are going to be set up similar to this, because the core thing about most groups that aren't just social in nature is there's something going on. There's a reason for people to coalesce into one organization, group, or area and be there for a long enough time that there can be relationships that are made from that. And so you get a microcosm, a bunch of microcosms of this in college. And for somebody like myself, college was amazing because I got all these chances to essentially try and see like what worked and what didn't. And hopefully I'm going to be able to share with you guys here what did not work, how you can avoid that, and the best ways to go about these things. But when things did work, you could also see how far you could take things. So for example, I remember my third year in college, I had gotten into this group of kind of like these like grizzled Greek life veterans where they're just kind of over the whole thing. They call it deactivated, right? So they're a bunch of like deactivated guys from fraternities and sororities, and they all got together. And what this did is, by me being associated with them and just showing up with them to events, what would happen is we would have these concerts, right? And there were a couple members or liaisons of this group that were involved in the organizational portion of this. So we would just get some of the fun nightlife-ish perks, just expedited entry to stuff, not having to pay for certain things. Every now and then something get comped. Not that much stuff gets like comped in like college, but whatever there was, it would happen. And then the real fun for me was just the access to like the group trips and not having to plan them, just being the who do I Venmo guy. And that taught me a lot about essentially what I would call like industry type people, right? And when I say industry, I'm usually talking about like nightlife industry, because a lot of this works the same way in big cities. But that was just one experience. That felt like one small lifetime of experience in this area. And there's so many lessons maybe I'll make a video on it at some point. There's so many lessons I could learn from just that. But then I had like another group, and it was just like a bunch of nerds that was like computer engineering, computer science. But they were really cool because they just had all these ideas and just fun to kick it with. And they're just always like smiling and happy to see you. And I was able to see that through. I had, like my gym bros here, there were like Asian student organizations there. And I remember my freshman year, I joined 11 of these, right? 11, that's a lot. That's a lot. Maybe don't do that. Even for me, that was a lot. But I got to learn all these different aspects of socializing and life in group scenarios, in community scenarios, because a lot of these organizations could be anywhere from 50 to, like 200 people. And you're going to gain such a breadth of knowledge that people who don't take advantage of this are not going to learn. So even if you are part of that 60% who has, average, varying average skills within that 60%, if you take advantage of this in college, you're going to be so sharp, and your skills are going to be so wide and varied when it comes to relating to different types of people, because these groups do have in-group and out-group language. They have culture, they have customs, they have do's and don'ts. And the more types of people you can get along with and learn from, the more your social skills are going to develop, and the better in general your life is going to be. That being said, when things don't go well, it sucks. And there were definitely times it doesn't go well. And from those times, you just have to take away some the hard lessons, but that still fits into the framework of what can I learn from this attempted new behavior? What was successful? What wasn't? What was the context? What could I do differently next time? How can I mitigate the risk and optimize the benefits of what I'm going for with this, specific behavior? And you're going to find that you are kind of a different person a little bit with each group, just because there's, some people call it code switching. There's different culture to each group. And I think it's just super powerful. So that is the hyperbaric, time chamber of training for social skills. Now, if you're outside of college, you're going to get a smaller version of this if you do not have a crazy thriving social circle that's always meeting new people, right? And there is definitely places where you can have similar environments, but usually it's just not going to be as concentrated and readily available as it is in college, which is okay. That's real life. But what I would say to people that are outside of college, if you missed the hyperbaric, time chamber, then what you want to do is you want to get involved in as many groups as is available to you at the moment that you can see at least once a week. And if you do that, you're going to be able to build your village, so to speak, and get your reps in and build relationships in that. The only difference is, if you're not in a big city, there is going to be an increased amount of risk to certain behaviors. So you can't go as hog wild as you can in college. But life is all about making mistakes, learning from them, and getting better. So if you're outside of college, I would still encourage you to find as many groups as possible to shore up those gaps in your social skills knowledge. If you're in a big city, you can go crazy with this, because that is kind of as close as it gets to college again, in terms of being in a super abundant social environment. And I can go over the city version of this another time. But yes, if you're going into college, or going to graduate soon, just take as much advantage of those different groups as you can. Join as many different things as you can. If you have stories, need more context or details, let me know, and I'll catch you in the next one. So thanks for watching.